Okay, Danielle and Jan, can you guys come up, please? While they're making their way, this is Danielle Martinez and Jan Stevens. We've asked them to speak because they are big supporters. And Danielle, thank you so much. And Jan, both of you, for just rallying behind this cause and helping with donations. Each year, these ladies are they're instrumental in getting awesome donations that ultimately drive great bids at the auction. So thank you both. So I'm going to start with Jan. So Jan, just real quickly, tell us why you support CMN.
Well, there's three great reasons why I support. We support, and I'm going to share that with you in a little bit. I'll tell you about each of the children that are in our lives that we have had experiences with firsthand with Phoenix Children's Hospital. So very passionate.
Okay, I'm going to go through your slides then. Are you ready for that?
Sure.
Okay, awesome.
Okay, this meets Stephen. Stephen was born with transposition of the great heart vessels. The aorta and pulmonary arteries were swapped. And he was born at St. Joe's, and he had surgery, and there he was able to get the problem corrected. I happened to be at the hospital that night when they were told that Stephen might not make it. And at 3 months old, Stephen was had a bypass surgery. And at 15 years old, he had a defibrillator put in by PCH. And this was in 2005. I think there was a time when PCH was renting Good Samaritan while they were building more rooms at PCH. Yes, third floor. And so in 2007, Stephen was 17 years old and had a leaky valve and it needed replaced. This was a very difficult surgery. And once again, they didn't know if he would make it, but he did. And Stephen had 5 more procedures called washouts. And by now he was 18 years old, and he started being seen at Mayo Clinic because he was an adult. And so he received a mechanical heart while he waited on a heart, which he finally received. And since then, he got another transplant in 2013. So this kid's had a pretty rough life. Recently, Stephen received a kidney from his dad, and they're watching that really closely. But his heart is doing really good. And Stephen's family said that they thought the nurses at PCH were fabulous, as well as the doctors. They received a lot of support. They loved the Emily Center. That's a place at the hospital where they could get medical information. And Stephen's parents said that they felt nothing but the greatest support from Phoenix Children's in this hospital is just worthy of all the support that we as realtors could possibly give them. The coolest thing about Stephen is that he now works for the Donor Network of Arizona, where they recover organs. And he loves his job, and he often flies organs to various hospitals, and he has to be on call and go out in the middle of the night. But he just said there's no greater reward than being able to see folks who need an organ, have their dreams come true. And so after all, he would know firsthand, how these recipients feel to be given another chance at life for as long as possible. And so PCH is a huge part of Stephen's story. And we are just immensely appreciative that this young man grew into such a wonderful human and that he wants to give back in this world. So that's Stephen. That's one reason. Sorry, I'm going to be a little lengthy because I've got 3 kids, but I'll make it quick. So this is Ellie. Her name is Lael. We call her Ellie. She's pretty special to us because this is our granddaughter. And she was born 9 years ago. Actually, this week was her birthday. And she was born with a tethered spine. She has tethered cord syndrome. A normal spinal cord floats freely within the spinal canal, but a tethered cord kind of sticks to the side of the canal. And so she has a syrinx of the spinal cord, which is like a fluid-filled cyst. And so she had to have surgery to have a shunt put in so that the spinal fluid can drain, and that's actually working very well. And a recent surgery, they put a little opening near her belly button and installed a button so that she can flush her colon. And although Ellie is going to have a lot of surgeries, and I didn't even tell you about all the ones she's had, she doesn't let that stop her. She lives a fairly normal life. She's pretty unstoppable. She has this I can do spirit about her, and she wants to do everything that her older siblings do. She's top student in her class, and she loves to dance and swim and play the piano. And I asked her parents, why do you love Phoenix Children so much? They're now in Texas. They've moved since then. And so she's now at Texas Children's Hospital. But they said that they are just feel indebted to PCH for the fabulous care that she was able to receive early on. And so they said one of the things that they really liked was the child life program at the hospital kept Ellie entertained and explained to her the surgical procedures in ways that a child could understand it. And her dog, which is her little stuffed animal, that she's had since she was a baby, always would get a hospital band, that matched her hospital band. And so, they're very child oriented. And my daughter was telling me, she said that the reason she and her husband, probably the biggest thing that stands out to them is that the neurosurgeon took Ellie's case before the board of neurosurgeons and convinced them to allow her to do an experimental surgery to ensure Ellie's quality of life, when other neurosurgeons said that they would not have done that. So they're forever thankful to this doctor and the wonderful staff at PCH. So that's our sweet Ellie. I'm not sure the doctor's name. She didn't give me names, but okay. And last but not least, this is little Ari, and she's a special little girl in our life. She was born in the Dominican Republic to missionary parents from the U.S. Her mom is from Arizona, and she's 4.5. She's almost 5 years old. She was born with Apert syndrome, which is like a congenital disorder that's characterized by malformations of the skull, the face, teeth, hands, and feet. She was born with webbed fingers and toes. And Apert syndrome occurs in 1 out of every 65,000 to 88,000 births. So it's very extremely rare. And when she was born, the doctors from the Dominican hadn't seen this type of syndrome before. And they didn't give her much hope. They didn't expect her to live much longer. And the family made the decision to make an emergency trip over back to the U.S. and landed in Phoenix. Ari was in critical condition and she needed immediate help with breathing. And so once she was at PCH, a whole team of doctors surrounded the family and gave them hope. And they said that was something they didn't have in the Dominican. The doctors were not giving hope. And so that was huge. They had, PCH had experience with similar syndromes and knew what to do for treatment. Ari's skull had closed too quickly, which stopped her brain from growing. From her hands to her feet, breathing tubes, feeding tubes, all these things, it took an entire team of doctors and nurses to address all of her issues. And this little baby has had 17 surgeries in her short, almost 5 years of life. The family was relieved to know that when they found all this out, that she would be able to receive care under one roof at PCH and not have to go to multiple facilities, which is kind of what was happening in the Dominican Republic. Ari doesn't yet speak. She has a trach. You can kind of see that there in both pictures. She uses sign language and she has a device that she uses to communicate. And using her device, she's shown that she can recognize, well, I'm a former educator, so it's very important that she be able to recognize those letters and numbers, and she knows all of her colors and shapes. And Ari loves to dance to music and do hand motions to songs, and she loves to explore and read books, and she has this boundless energy and spirit of and she has no fear to try anything new. She's been a blessing to the whole family as well as to us, all of the friends that have the benefit of being around her. She's a walking miracle, and all thanks to the staff at PCH. I was at the hospital and they saved her life, so I know firsthand what PCH can do. And Ari continues to get services and treatment through PCH. And per the family, PCH has given this child a more normal quality of life, and it's something that will never be forgotten. So all of this is 3 great reasons you should support and get behind the Month of Miracles. There's a multitude of ways that you can donate, and we just really need to get behind them because this is a miracle working hospital.
Awesome. Thank you, Jan. Mike, do we have the donation link anywhere in our slides that we could throw up there? So if you can't participate in the Month of Miracles at the event, you can donate online. And just before I get to Danielle, we do have things happening throughout the month, so make sure you check the calendar. Tucson's doing some fun stuff. Arrowhead North, of course, Steve is doing his awesome fun game. And I understand you guys are having lasagna this year, so definitely don't want to miss that. All right, so this is Danielle Martinez. Tell us a little bit about your story and your experience and the services that you received.
I think maybe something. Oh, did I give you guys? No. So my baby Andrew is 23 and he was born 32 weeks and we were just parents for 10 months, 3 weeks when he was born premature. And he was 5'7". He was one of the bigger babies in the NICU. And again, like Jan said, it was just the third floor of Good Sam. The waiting room for the parents was maybe 8 chairs, nothing like the big, beautiful hospital now. He was born with an enlarged liver and spleen, hydrocephalus, which is fluid on the brain, and weak lungs, low platelets. They took him away really quick. I barely touched him before they whisked him away, put a breathing tube in him. And so his so the ventricles in your brain, process your spinal fluid. And so his were too small. So they put a little reservoir bag in his head at 1 month old, and that didn't work. So then he did the shunt, the VP shunt, which drains it from a tube that goes behind his neck and through his chest, and it terminates in his belly. And shunts typically fail. 50% of them fail the first few months. They have a 50% chance of failure within 1 to 6 months. So his lasted 11 years. So we were super grateful. His neurosurgeon was amazing. Then he had enlarged liver. They did a liver biopsy. So that was his third surgery in 3 months. And one of the great things about PCH is that all these ologists descended upon us: neurology, pulmonology, cardiology, nephrology, obviously the neonatologists. And we didn't know, when you have a sick baby, you're just like, your world's spinning. So they all just kind of took care of us. His nurse, Jerry, was, we called her Grandma Jerry because she stood right between him and another baby. And at some, I think it was around December, we had gotten a call like 6 a.m. He had stopped breathing, and she did chest compressions. So she saved our baby's life multiple times. And he was, after one of his surgeries, he really had a hard time. He kept pulling out his trach or his breathing tube. So they gave him a medicine to basically put him in like a induced coma. And that was during Christmas. And so she took a picture for me before that. And it was just heartbreaking because he looked like he was dead, and he was just super still for like 5 days. So right before we were ready to be, I was ready to be discharged. He was 98 days old when he left the hospital, and they gave us CPR classes. Me and Richard took CPR classes because he came home with breathing treatments, an NG tube, which is a tube that goes up your nose and then your belly to feed you, because he couldn't nurse, he couldn't consume even a bottle because he was too sick, and eating takes calories. And so they gave him liquids through a feeding tube. So they also, because he has hydrocephalus, he automatically qualified for Mercy Care access and all the things he was going to take: speech therapy, occupational therapy, early intervention. Everything was just kind of like handed to us. And I talk to a lot of parents now that when they have children that are trying to get services, like speech therapy, if they have autism and trying to get services through school, it's okay. And I don't even know how lucky we were. I guess because they had hydrocephalus, so he's automatically, his whole life will be taken care of. And so they just had a lot of really sweet things. And they give us a little letter. I'm gonna try to read this. It says, "Dear family, while I'm in the hospital, I need you. Please love me just the way I am. Spend time with me when you can. I need you as much as I need all the machines and constant medical care. Be excited for each small improvement, and don't lose heart if I have a setback. My progress will probably be unseen, uneven. Look at me, not the tape, machines, and tubes. Be patient with me and believe in me. Give me time to grow and mend." So they just became our family there, especially since we couldn't be there regularly. And he's had about 15 surgeries in his life for all of his his medical things, but he's
Where-
a
Where's Andrew at now?
yeah, well, yeah. So Andrew just attended a 2-year program at Grand Canyon University. And then he was just on the news for playing adaptive pickleball, like Channel 3. So he's a little rock star. Um, so we just, obviously, we support PCH, and um, I just, for being a parent and not having resources and a place to bring our daughter um, to spend time there, because I spent about an hour with him every night. I had to wait till I put Rochelle to bed, and I went to the hospital like at 9 o'clock at night. And so I had about an hour with him every day. And so the services that they have now, and the rooms, and like the whole kitchens and family rooms for the families to be able to stay and camp out, that's super critical. So your donations help make that happen.
Let's give her a round of applause, you guys. You're always so composed. I was not prepared for that. Needed some Kleenex over here. Okay, come on. We all do. There's some floating around, so we got a box. All right, so I get the pleasure to introduce this gentleman. If you haven't met JD Wander, he is our corporate development officer at PCH. This is his first year with us, so he gets to experience how passionate we are about the month of miracles. And so his role is to basically go out and build relationships and develop, like us, right? So we will, help to fundraise and put things together that help to support the hospital's mission. So help me give this guy a big welcome.
Oh, okay. I'll use the mic. I'll be professional like this. Okay. Well, hi. I see a lot of familiar faces in the crowd. We had a kickoff breakfast back in May down at the hospital. So it was nice to have a lot of you attend and learn more about the hospital. And that's kind of what I'm going to be telling you a little bit about today. And also, I had a counterpart that was supposed to be coming with me. She's our patient ambassador and our new CMN champion. Every year we're able to put up a patient to be the CMN champion in the face of the hospital. Unfortunately, she ended up in the ER just the day before yesterday, and I was down at the hospital. We were doing a summer carnival for the kids. I was able to go upstairs and check on her, and I'm gonna play a video. You'll get to meet Samantha via her video, and I'll tell you a little bit about her. But to see her and then to see her in the hospital, it was really, really sad. So with that all said, I'm going to go ahead and just tell you a little bit about, you guys can all read obviously, but we are extremely impactful because most of our patients, not most, 51% of our patients are from the lower income families. So it's extremely important that we have the funds and the things necessary to be able to treat outside of insurance. The daily operating cost, it says 2.7, it's up to 2.9. $2.9 million for one day to operate the hospital system. Oh, and something interesting, we're no longer Phoenix Children's Hospital. Now we are Phoenix Children's, and that's because we are opening multiple locations across the valley. We'll talk a little bit about that. Nate will speak on the West Valley expansion. So we have stuff happening in East Valley, just all kinds of growth. And I forget the first speaker's name, but she was talking a little bit about some of the programs that we have at Phoenix Children's, and everyone that she mentioned, Child Life, the Emily Center for educational purposes, animal assisted therapy. Those programs are all solely funded through philanthropy. So without the philanthropic efforts of our partners, we do not have 170 plus programs. So the things that we're trying to accomplish this month, Month of Miracles, and all year round, donating and raising funds, those are the things that it goes to. And without those programs, animal assisted therapy, music, one darn cool school, it's a fully functioning school from kindergarten all the way to high school, they wouldn't exist. So where's the clicker click? There we go. You could click. I guess I can. Is that good? All right. That's much good. Okay. All right, so yes, a little bit about the expansion. We actually it was last week, we opened our brand new freestanding facility um, in Avondale. Oh wait, was it Arrowhead? Arrowhead. Yes, I was there. This is how much growth that we have. We have so much going on, guys. It's a 3-story freestanding hospital, 30 emergency patient rooms, and 24 inpatient beds. And you can see we opened prior to that, not too long ago, about a year ago, the Avondale campus, 40, and that's more of an emergency department setup, but 40 emergency patient rooms and lots of space for our specialty. And then in the East Valley, we're partnering with Dignity Health. It's going to be specific to NICU. At one end of the wing, we're going to have Phoenix Children's. The other end will be Dignity Health. And that way the moms can stay with the kiddos and they're not separated. So that's really kind of special. This is just a little bit about those programs. Animal assisted therapy is my favorite. Who's been to the hospital and seen the animal assisted therapy? Yes. So I had the animal assisted therapy team come to speak at our last event engagement. And it's just crazy. And it's not even the fact that kids like dogs, right? It's actually really important because, for instance, if you have a kiddo upstairs and they're not eating, right? You can't get them to eat. You bring one of the doggos upstairs, you say, oh, do you want to give, Tilly a treat? Oh, sure. So he gives Tilly a treat. Okay, now you take a treat. You eat something. And then before they know it, the kids are eating. So that's just one example of how important it is. But Child Life Zone, we have the chaplains. These are all philanthropically funded. Everything up here, the One Darn Cool School, all of the books, everything. We pay 8 master's level educators to be full time. All of our child life specialists are all have their grad degrees. It's not just people just coming out. It's a very specific group of individuals that we hire, the top tier, just like everything else. So I am going to show you now Samantha's little slides so you can see her. And then, oh, actually, hey, we're going to invite Nate up here. Everyone knows Nathan Martinez. Say hello to Nate. Hello, Nate. There you go, Nate. All right.
Yeah,
How
I'll
do I
be real
start this
quick
video?
because I know we want to get to Shannon and you guys have been crying enough. But I gave a presentation last month at the Children's Hospital with all the RE/MAX agents that are donors that came out, and I kind of laid into them a little bit, right? Hold that for a second. I laid into them a little bit because companies like, let's see, Jersey Mike's, in one day this year raised 600,000. Okay, RE/MAX, all offices throughout the valley raised 89,000 in a year. So if Jersey Mike's can give $1 for every sandwich they sell, and we're selling millions and millions and hundreds of millions of dollars worth of real estate, we should be able to maybe give a little bit more. So part of these stories that you hear are reasons why we should give to a great organization. I want to call it Leanne in the back, Frank's daughter. So, I've known Frank for 30 plus years. And Frank told me the first time he told me the story about Leanne, he said his wedding ring went up her arm. How much did you weigh? 1 pound, 8 ounces. Frank said they weighed her in grams. You know what I mean? So here she is today. So taking care of us. Anyway, I'm sure most of you have seen this. This happened about 2 months ago now. And not everybody that is sick needs help at the hospital. Sometimes it's a tragedy. I can go on and give you a lot of details. It was interesting. We were watching the story, and the story that there's a great story where it shows the police officers going in with SWAT gear, knocking down the door, and going in and saving the baby. Pretty amazing. They brought the baby out. So when we were watching the show, we saw one of our neighbors who's chief of police, and Tanya goes, "Hey, there's Art." So Tanya goes, "Hey, we got a house. Why don't we offer the house up to them?" So luckily, we reached out to the family, and they've been living in one of our rental properties since the incident. That house that burned down was 2 months old. That was the grandparents' house. And they had just moved in 2 months prior. The daughter took refuge there. I got a lot of detail, but we don't have time, but just know, guys, everybody needs help. I love this organization for 23 years since the first REMAX convention I went to, and I heard Marie Osmond come together with REMAX and do the partnership. Every house we've ever sold, we've donated. This is where I was challenging the other agents at REMAX. REMAX, I don't know if you got that slide. Yeah, there you go. We had 5,026 transactions for REMAX in Maricopa County last year. $2.84 billion in volume. We used to ask for $25 as a minimum. That's a gimme. What happens when you do a donation? I think it's 30 now is the minimum. That the Children's Hospital will send a card thanking you or thanking the home seller or home buyer because we made a donation. And for $30, it's almost a joke that's what we do. The mailing, the cost of the card, and these cards are really cool. They're made by kids, so it's their artwork and so forth. But so I was challenging them if everybody did in the REMAX system, all those transactions did $25, it'd be $125,000. And keep in mind, offices like ours that raise $30, $40, $50,000 a year. I'm trying to motivate everybody to give a little bit more. If everybody did 50, it'd be $250,000. You guys, over the last 23 years at REMAX Professionals, we're at over $750,000 in giving, and I'd like to get this over $1 million as soon as possible. So it won't happen this year, but we're consistent and we continue to give. Hey, real quick, there's going to be it's already happening. So Miracle Agent Program, if you're $500 or more in giving, you're going to be recognized as a bronze person. It goes all the way up to 50,000. The same with each office location. An office reaches 2,000, they become a miracle office. You'll see more and more of this, and we'll start pushing that out as people start achieving those goals. And again, I'm just going to be real brief on time because we've had a lot of Children's Hospital for the last 30 minutes. And I don't know what we got here. If that's you.
Basically, we're going to raise some money this month, guys. The month of miracles. You can get with me on that, and I can give you all the specifics. Basically, it's a really great marketing tool. Let's just be honest. I don't know why, if I was a realtor, I would really want to partner with Children's Hospital and say, we have sign writers. You guys can put this as a children's miracle home, et cetera, et cetera. Buyers love it. You're helping kids. It seems like a no-brainer to me. But there's my information. If you need it, everyone has it. Nate, Kim, just reach out to someone. I can answer your questions. That's my cell phone. You can text me. So that's that. Kim, is the Samantha's slide on here, the next one? Mike, we're just going to play her little video really quick so you can see her because she's going to actually be at the August 16th event, the comedy show. And she's so great. Like I said, it was really tough to see her and then go and visit, and it's a completely different kid, just because in the blink of an eye, she's not feeling well and she's back in the hospital. So this is why we do what we do. And just for the record, while he's getting this, REMAX Professionals, you guys are far and away the best REMAX office in Arizona. far and away. Really, give yourself a round of applause. I can't even begin to speak, highly enough of Nate and your team and everyone that's involved. So please continue the momentum. You guys really are the best Remax account in the Valley. So this is Samantha. And,
Kramer and I'm 16 years old and I'm now affiliated with it. I was diagnosed with ulcerative colitis this week when I was in 14. Since then, I've had 7 surgeries, all related to the United States. I went to hospital about for a year and was arrested this past September, which I'm coming up on a year anniversary of being cemetery, which is the I've always loved painting and baking, and I played volleyball for a few years. Past September, which I'm coming up on a year anniversary of being stoma free, which is going to be such a big day for me. I've always loved painting and baking, and I played volleyball for a few years, which I hope to be back on the court soon. I love eating pasta, and I love listening to Olivia Rodrigo. I actually went to her concert this past February, which was a dream come true to me. Despite the on and off stays that I've had in the hospital, I've maintained straight A's and was on honor roll this past year. I'm not used to being a junior, but I was on honor roll and I got straight A's, and that was such a big accomplishment to me. I'm very thankful for Child Life and music, pet, and art therapy because they made me feel so safe and at home despite being in the hospital. Since being diagnosed and everything that's happened after that, my outlook on life has completely shifted. I've had to grow up a lot faster than those around me, which it's affected me a lot, but because I feel like I've just matured a lot faster, I'm truly so blessed to be here every day. Like, life is such a beautiful thing with all of the good and bad. And I hope to go to school to be a GI doctor and help kids that go through the same thing that I'm.
so yeah, so that's Samantha. And
But
today
I'm truly just
she's got
so thankful.
multiple procedures. This morning, right now, she's getting an endoscopy. She has to get a colostomy bag. So that just goes to show the power of what we're doing and how it really helps kids be healthy and become, kids that they're meant to be. And Samantha's going to be at the event August 16th. If you want to come and meet her, she'll be there. She's so great. I just can't even begin to describe how awesome she is. So thank you all for your efforts. I know we ran a little long, but we really appreciate you. If you need my contact info, again, Kim, anyone has it. And thank you so much, guys. Really appreciate you. Thanks, Jitty.
All right, well, we're going to have Burger Shannon follow that. Yeah, I think you've run into the situation before. Also, you might have noticed the comedy night slide right after Danielle's story. Like, yeah.
Good morning, you guys. It's just really unfair to make me follow this with this. But it does put life in perspective, doesn't it? So all these changes seem pretty minor now after all of that, considering the things we deal with. So, or that they're dealing with, sorry. So, we're going to start with, today's the day. It's 8/1. Today's the day. I woke up this morning thinking, in a weird way, thank you. Finally, it's here, so we can just move on and get things done now with it, not keep anticipating and talking about it. So I just want to remind you of the armless rules. Again, the other MLSs all have similar penalties, but their dates and escalation might be a little different, but the basis of the compliance is the same. So I'm going to ask you all to repeat after me. Please, I'm not joking here. I will not put any compensation, commission, fire broker, money words or numbers. Can you remember all that? All of those things in MLS anywhere, not in. not in the remarks, private, semi, or public, in the documents, or in the fields anywhere. Please. No pictures of 3 pillows or 5 pillows, nothing like this. You guys, this is no joke. They're taking this very seriously. So I want to share with you that Armless has, I just double checked as we were sitting here, they have removed all of the fields. So they are gone. So hopefully everyone got those pending or negotiated. If there was a co-broke offered yesterday, make sure you had that in your copies of your MLS. Aligned either nothing related to MLS. So even if it has a feed from MLS or this is a big one, you guys, social groups. So those fun little forums that I have removed myself from online because I think they're incredibly dangerous. And I would encourage you to do the same. But social groups, if there are other brokers or agents on there and you guys are all posting your rates, that is a big no-no. That's the kind that will shut us down. So please take this very seriously. Yes, to Andre's point, he had to go from a lined conversation to a text or a phone call or an email with that agent to have that discussion about any potential compensation. So this is big, you guys, and it's done and it's today. So these are the things you'll get in. They've actually just sent an email confirming that this is done. They've sent this out with even more detail in it. So I want you guys to watch for that in your emails. Again, this is all Armless, but all of the MLSs are doing the same. Flagstaff, theirs actually went into effect 2 days ago on the 30th. They all are a little bit different dates, but they're all doing the same. The penalties or dates just might be a little different. So I just want you to be very careful of that. Take it seriously. We've already had Armless contact our agent and myself with violations that they have scrubbed. And it was in the remarks. So they have technology that they are scrubbing this. They are taking it seriously, you guys. So please, it was actually 2 days ago. So that was a proactive, you better get this removed before kind of move. So, so please, no conversations, don't direct them anywhere. Don't put a website that has it, nothing. Just keep it between a conversation or some other means completely outside of MLS. We'll go to questions later because we've got a lot to get through, but we'll go through the bullets here. So one thing I also want to mention is that I have created, because our current listing agreement is still enforceable. However, it's not necessarily compliant with the new rules. There's something we have to disclose in there and the way the compensation fields run. There's been a lot of discussion about having all of our existing listings that are not sold yet or not pending yet sign a new listing agreement. You can do that if that's something your client is comfortable doing. However, I also created a 1-page addendum for you that just has the compliance pieces. So it doesn't have every change in the red line version, but it has the pieces that are important in terms of compensation and disclosure. So I know it looks like a lot, but it's really because it's got sale, rental, page 2 of your listing agreement. So that will be available. We'll email those out to you today. That's done. I would recommend, I would say August 15th. Let's give it 2 weeks to get these done and turned in Sky Slope, and you'll just put them in as a listing addendum, just like anything else. So let's do, and we'll start double checking that last week to make sure we pick up the last minute stragglers or anything like that. The next one is the buyer broker agreement addendum. And again, similar to the employment agreement for the listing side, this is for the buyer broker side for your existing buyer broker agreements. So again, I just tried to keep it to the 1 page. I didn't include all of the changes because if you guys have looked hopefully at the new buyer broker agreement, there's 3 pages of changes. I kept it to the disclosure and compensation parts that were really more compliant. So So that's there. I did tweak a little bit of the language in the VA section to recognize that, because they didn't show that it was, that rule is suspended temporarily for VA buyers to be able to compensate their buyer broker. So I did include that just to not scare VA buyers quite as much. But hopefully this is a little softer and easier to present to your clients than all of those new documents entirely. Yes, not necessarily pending. I would say anything that's, if you have a buyer broker for someone who has not purchased yet. Yeah, that makes sense. On buyer broker agreements, I just want to remind you guys two other things really quick. They're required for any time you're working with, is the language. So if you're working with a buyer and they want to view a home, that's when it's required 100% of the time. That includes virtual, FaceTime, you know, someone who's out of state that you're doing this with and you're walking through the house for them, that kind of thing. We've had that happen. That includes those. Anytime you're providing that touring or viewing of the property with a client, this is what you have to have as the buyer broker agreement, or the buyer broker agreement to show property. There's the two different ones, the exclusive and the non-exclusive, but you have to have one or the other. The other thing I want to recommend to you, and I've said this a few times, but I really want to drive this home because we've already had one, well, several, but one this week, where if you meet a buyer at an open house, at a lead, they call you off your listing, whatever it is, I would recommend, rather than that conversation that we typically have with, are you already working with an agent? Or, you know, have you signed anything with another agent? Those kind of questions. Stop and ask them, how many houses have you seen? That answer will then lead into a deeper conversation that will give you more information than a buyer saying, no, I'm not working with anybody, although they were, and they don't understand what that means. Or, no, I didn't sign anything, or they don't know what they signed, or I just signed an agency. They don't get it. So ask them how many houses they've seen and go deeper with them on that conversation, because that will be very telling. So if you can get that as part of your script, I would highly recommend it. We have had, and it's coming up where, you know, buyers do what they're going to do. They bounce around, they go where they want to go, they talk to who they want to, they sign what they want, and then they just work with whoever. So we've already had a buyer broker situation just this week where buyer's agent was working with them, had an exclusive buyer broker agreement, had 2 houses in negotiations that I believe canceled, I'm not entirely sure, that were actually under contract. They decided they were going to take a break for a few days, a week, and come back to it. And then 30 days later, after they quit responding, you find their name and MLS and tax records under a new property with a different agent. So the challenge we've talked about is the pursuit of that amount of compensation that they owe. And you'd have to sue them. It's different than, you know, a seller automatically, typically, they're either going to cancel or they're going to sell. There's really only the 2 options, right? Because you have signs, you have all these other things going on. On a buyer, they just bounce around and talk to who they want. So we would have to pursue them through litigation, hire an attorney, sue a client. And the general consensus that I'm hearing from all the attorneys that have talked about this is that the attorney or the buyer will, as soon as you serve them with something like that, they're going to go hire their own legal counsel. And the first thing their attorney is going to do is look through everything you did and say, oh, that's where they didn't do their job. They didn't fulfill their fiduciary duties. And now we're going to countersue. So we're going to have to take all those things into consideration if they happen. The preventative piece of this is to have a really, really clear conversation with them about what an exclusive agreement means. It means if you buy any house during the term of this agreement, you owe this amount to my company, period. And we can't skirt that. We can't, because when we do, this is the kind of stuff that potentially will happen. We have to have a very clear conversation with them. So that's what all of this is about, is just the clarification of what we earn and how we earn it. Okay. So just be careful with that. Okay. Also, these are all coming to you guys. We've showed this a little bit. We tweaked it. Have not fit the tweak yet, but we're getting there. This is the flow chart that I think is really handy and simple language for you, that I think if you just keep it with you or save it on your phone, wherever you want to save it. And again, we'll email this out when we have it finalized. That basically you can follow this flow chart and know which forms you need to use when and what to ask for. You need me to go any deeper on that, or so everybody can see it and you'll get copies, but I think it's pretty basic. The idea is just to give you a quick reference guide of when and how to use it, these forms. You have the new seller compensation addendum, and I'm going to bounce back and forth between this and the last slide, the flow chart, for a specific reason. So in my opinion, I believe that the compensation agreement between brokers, I don't love it. Let me just say it that way, because I don't know. I believe that if that'll continue, and towards the end of the year, the DOJ has a stronger opinion. They've made their opinion pretty clear so far. But if they do, the one thing they want is the decoupling of any sharing of commissions and compensation. So I believe the CAB, in my opinion, this is strictly my personal opinion, could go away or cause potential issues down the road. I suggest that you use this in pretty much all cases if there's going to be negotiation about compensation to a buyer broker. I think doing it through the contract and allowing the buyer and the seller to work out their terms that include this type of closing cost, because that's what it is the buyer broker is a compensation is a closing cost to the buyer. Let them work out how they want to pay for these things and how much they need to net and how much they need to come to the table with, and let them direct you on how they want that negotiated. So to keep it very simple, your listing agreement with your seller, you negotiate what you're going to charge them or what you're willing to pay. Your buyer broker agreement with your buyer, the same. Here's what you're going to pay me. And that is a cost to the buyer, no different from a lender fee, their origination fees, all the doc pricing, all the things that they get charged. Title fees, it's a closing cost to them. So now we have seller's costs, buyer's costs, and they negotiate in the contract how they want those covered or paid for or not. They don't even have to. They could just pay those things. But that's where I think is the safer, cleaner, less confusing way to do this. So when you get that call, if you're on the listing side from a buyer's agent and they're asking, is your seller to pay? I feel like I'm still getting the thing. Then, you have your listing agreement where they've authorized you to provide that information or not. And then you say, they'll ask you potentially for a compensation agreement between brokers, the CAB form. And I would suggest saying, why don't you provide that a seller compensation addendum with your offer, and then we'll negotiate those details. Because the way that the change in the listing agreement is that it is an offer of compensation, meaning it's no different, as I've mentioned, than a carpet allowance, washer, dryer, and refrigerator that they include in MLS. But if it doesn't go into an agreement, a written agreement between the parties, it doesn't exist. So a seller can offer up to we're going to use bananas because that's what we always use lately. We're going to say, seller can tell you, I am willing to offer a buyer broker or compensation in the amount of 100 bananas. And then the buyer comes along or the buyer agent comes along and says, we need 200 bananas. Can you put that on a CAB? So the answer would be no, my seller has only authorized this amount. However, if you need something different, submit your offer and we'll present that to the seller, and the seller then can decide what they want to do. And I think that's better for everybody. I just think it's a lot cleaner, safer, and it leaves the conversation between the buyer and the seller rather than us. Does that make sense? So on this slide, that would be, I don't know if online they can see me doing this, but under the listing broker offers of cooperation, where if it's yes or no, if it's yes, I think you should still maybe jump to the seller compensation addendum. Does that make sense? Oh, I have a pointer. feel fancy. So right here, if it's a yes, have the conversation, but use this instead. That would be my recommendation. And I think not only for the reasons I've mentioned, but I think also for the fact that it's less confusing. If you have both of these agreements going, or you have, you know, which one do I use for which amount? I just think using one is much cleaner, much easier for everybody. So, correct. Might be because again, the cab could be done prior to an offer. You might be spinning wheels, filling these out, getting them back and forth and doing all that for something that never produces a real buyer anyway, you know? So why, I think it's just a whole lot of extra work that's not necessary and doesn't make sense to me, but, so 3 websites that I really encourage you to go to learn, to attention to. Here, up here, I guess. Okay. So the first one there is the aaronline.com with Arizona best practices. These are for the forms. They have the red lines, they have videos, they have FAQs, they have articles. There is a ton of information there, you guys. There are, the second one is the NAR site. Again, that's more for an overview of things. NAR also, and I'm going to provide these when we send out these new forms because I just saw it this morning. They also have 2 slides that are 2 real simple things that say explanation for your buyer in plain language. So I thought they were really nice. I'm going to provide those to you guys. We didn't have them when we got this ready. So again, stuff is coming out rapid fire right now because of the changes. And then the third one is, this is the Armless site. However, I'm going to clarify again, even for the other MLSs, it's the public site. You don't have to log in to see this information, but they've done a really nice job on armless.com, not Flex, but armless.com, of putting all their FAQs in very plain language as well. And because it includes that MLS piece, it's very simple and I would just really encourage you guys, take some time to go and read these things. Again, some of it's national, some of it's going to be best practices for, you know, what they're recommending. And then we have what we're going to do within our brokerage that we've talked about. But I really encourage this because here's what I'm getting, you guys. Since we've had all these conversations, and I'm just going to be very candid with you here. You're going to get my soapbox rant again. We've had, I believe it was just over 40 of our agents out of 130 who have not yet attended a single meeting or come and listen to any of this. Or do we know, and we were making phone calls to those agents. We are making sure they are very well aware. We have a few that still have not signed for the new Armless rule or for the new MLS rules. And then I get the questions, and I'm going to be very honest. I try to stay very positive and patient, but it's hard on me. I get calls. My phone for the last 3 days has blown up. Text, phone calls. I can't get to all of it. I can't answer every individual question when the information is available to you already. And I think that I think what I'm going to ask of you is that if you have a question, before you hit send or call or email Shannon or Leanne or anyone else, that you go here and look first, because the answer is there. It's going to be there. Now, there are going to be one-offs, and there are going to be weird gray areas, and there's going to be situational things. Of course, bring those to us. I'm not saying I don't want to talk to any of you. I'm just saying, please take some responsibility to learn these things and use the resources that are available to you so that we can focus on the real issues that we're moving forward on. And I mean that in the nicest way, you guys. I really do. I think so we can move to the mastermind and go into questions now. I will tell you, we do have the new, as a quick follow-up, we do have the new policy and procedures manual coming out. It's currently in process. We're having legal involvement in that. So when that's available, we will get that out to you. Hopefully it'll be very soon, but we'll include all of our new brokerage policies in terms of some of these things. But I think the things to remember right now, don't break their MLS rules. Make sure you're explaining the compensation and having those conversations outside of MLS. Make sure you have a showing agreement or a buyer broker agreement before you go and show a house. And remember where the resources are. And we've talked about it ad nauseum, I feel like. So questions. And we're gonna get a mic to you because we have so many online. Sorry.
Watch Mike run. Question,
Yes,
are these forms now in SkySlope?
yes,
Okay,
I
have
have-
you set up a template?
yes.
Oh, thank you,
The
thank you, thank
template,
you.
so, I thank you for bringing this up. Thank you, Cindy. I had it on my notes. So the checklists have been updated. Keep in mind, all of these technology between MLS and Transaction Desk and SkySlope, they're all working through this today. So Armless has already been down for a short time. I hear it's back up. They weren't able to accept new listings there for a little bit this morning. So there's going to be some technology glitches over the next couple of weeks, probably. But they are up now. I did confirm SkySlope Forms has all of the new forms already available, and different than before when you had to update them manually. If they would give you that prompt, they have them automatically updated. So that was really nice to see this morning. The checklists have been updated to include on your listings. You will all have to provide the MLS printout now with your listings. Now you can do that or the input sheet. They're going to both show required, but similar to a dual, we'll turn off one or the other if you have your client sign one or the other. I don't care which one it is, you have them sign. I think it would be easier just to have them sign the MLS printout, because I think to a client that's much easier to read than 400 checkboxes. So that would be a recommendation. Leslie? If you have your client sign your MLS printout, no, I will turn off the input form. Yes, trying to make that easier on all of us. And I think the input form is, that's again, my personal opinion. I think it's crazy. Let me finish really quick here. We'll go to online questions as well. Also on the checklist, on the listing side, you're gonna see the compensation agreement between brokers. Again, I don't recommend it, but it's in there if applicable, so it's not required. You're going to see on your sales side, your buyer broker agreements. Again, both of them, the showing agreement and the buyer broker agreement are going to show both required. Again, once I know which one you're using, I'll turn off the other, but we need one or the other. So when you see those, again, you don't need both, but I don't know which one you're going to use until you turn it in. SkySlope is, I'm going to hold it up higher. SkySlope is also, I'm doing a training with them on Monday for the new buyer broker, the way we'll be able to input those. I don't know what date they're launching this, but it sounds like pretty quick since we're finally doing the training on it. But what it will be is similar to your listings. You'll input a buyer broker and then you'll convert it to a sale once you have that client under contract. So it'll be very similar to a listing. You put the listing in, once it goes under contract, you'll convert it to a sale. So we'll have that available very soon, but for the time being, please still email them to me, and then I'll keep those in the audit file. The new addendum, there is a buyer broker addendum in there. There's the new, all the new forms, there's a new placeholder for them essentially. The listing addendum and the things that were just revised, I left the same placeholders, but you will see some of the new ones in there. Bear with me if there's glitches and things don't show up properly or you see weird stuff, let me know, because we all know SkySlope's been a little wonky lately with all of the technology changes. So be patient with us and with them. They're already updated. So Kim was just asking to make sure we update those as they come up for that prompt, but they are automatic, even in the templates. So I was really happy to see that. It makes it much easier. Yes. So, all right. So we have online questions.
Okay, so we have a question from Linda Raywalt. She wants to know what about the buyer broker agreement that the buyer signed and what they agree to pay.
So I'm gonna back up to, if I understand the question. The existing buyer broker agreements you have out there that are not under contract currently, I would recommend, and hopefully I'm answering your question, Linda, that using, well, not recommend, I would say you need to use this new buyer broker addendum or a new buyer broker agreement altogether to make sure that we're compliant moving forward with the settlement term.
You, James Lombardi wants to know,
I got all kind of colors for these.
James Lombardi wants to know for our files that are currently pending, should we get a CAB or compensation addendum completed? Which one is best?
As I understand it, if it's pending, particularly, and I'm assuming he's asking about the buyer side. If that was the reason for printing those MLS printouts, because those are honored. They will be honored prior to today. So anything that we have that was already offered a co-broke, as my understanding is that all the brokers are honoring those agreements through MLS.
Lisa Larkin wants to know if there are anything specific they need to know about MLS SAZ.
Yes. So MLSAZ, which is Tucson, is not making their change until Monday. I will have your new listing addendum done by then. I just, obviously I have to take them. If I had a couple more days, I was going to use it. So yes, Lisa will have a new listing addendum for you there, and or any other changes they do have. They don't all use the AAR forms for everybody else. They don't use the AAR listing forms. They have their own listing forms. But I did, for all of those in Tucson who are on here, I did actually add the Green Valley Sahuarita addendum placeholder. I added the entry deferral authorization form placeholder for you and your checklist so that you'll start seeing those as well. So you have a place to put those that make sense. If there's any others as you're, that you use regularly and I've missed them, please let me know and I can add those as well. But yeah, Monday, we're good. All right. Another question in the back, Cindy?
Run.
I just want to tell you, Shannon, that I so appreciate all that you have been doing for this transition. It just blows
Thank
me
you.
away.
Thank you, guys.
And I sincerely hope you're being compensated more for all of this extra pain and suffering that you've been going through. But, boy, what a job.
We can only receive concessions. We're not going to talk about compensation here.
Thank you, Cindy. Yeah, I want bananas.
Shannon Wellman, 2024.
Yeah. All right. Thank you. I appreciate that. I will tell you guys that you're going to run into a lot of agents out there saying a lot of different things. You're going to run into other brokerages. They're saying different things. Everyone's going to have their own policies on some of these things. And we're not all going to be consistent. I see that over the next couple of months, again, we'll kind of, that will funnel down to what the new normal will be for all of us. But right now we're all just going with what we think is the best that we can. So we will see and hear different things. We'll see new ideas. That's going to be all part of it. I welcome any suggestions or any things. I've already gotten some things that you guys have heard that other agents are trying, in terms of the logistics of this, not talking compensation, but just communicating that compensation or where they're putting that information or, all these other things. I welcome any suggestions you have because you're the ones out in the field. You're my eyes and ears out there to see and know what's easiest out there. So feel free to bring those and we'll.
Thank you guys, because there weren't that many questions. That means that Shannon has really pounded this into your head over the last 2 months. There are brokerages that don't even have meetings yet about this. So you're going to be dealing with cross-sell agents that don't have a clue. Not like that's ever been a problem before, but it probably will be a problem now, There's one thing, a couple things, where's Christine at? There she is. So Christine's at the dog park. There's a lady there. I won't say the company name. They had their first meeting day before yesterday. And the agent quit right after that meeting, right? You know, when a lot of agents aren't going to want to work in this environment, right? And that's okay. You know, 1 in 168 humans in Maricopa County have a real estate license. Some of you have multiple kids. Those are humans, right? You know, sometimes that's, you know, but you understand everybody has a license, and we're going to probably see a lot of people, you know, the article that I put in the inner circle. The average agent in Phoenix sells a house 1 every 7 months. You're going to be dealing with these agents out there that haven't been prepared, haven't been trained, and are probably going to drive us a little nutty with all their questions and so forth. As I said originally, when this first came out, my mindset was, I'm just going to use the addendum in the contract. I'm not going to try and call 10 different agents and ask them if they're co-broking, because most of them have a second job or a full-time job, right? And getting back to them is very difficult. So, you know, Shannon and I talked the other day about what if we just, as a company policy, eliminate the cab? May happen, right? Thought we'd just give it a try, but see how it works out, get some best practice in front of us and see how the whole industry is working, you know? I know this industry is going to work it out, right? We've been around. We're all fighters and scrappers. I know none of you guys have a salary, right? The only way you make money is to provide a service, and we'll continue doing that. So I'm just proud of every one of you, okay? The 50 agents in our company that haven't been paying attention, you need to pay attention, right? Because we're not going to allow anybody to hinder all of us, right? So we're looking, calling, making sure people are dialed in, and if they're not, maybe we'll have to reintroduce them to the marketplace. Yeah.
I will also, you guys, we are going to also, once we have these checklists, I have one thing that I'm kind of going back and forth on that I'm adding. Once we do have those finalized, they will look a little like this, a very rough draft that we have. The checklist will be with the required documents. We will provide these to you. So you have a template for what do I need if I'm doing a lease? What do I need if I'm doing a listing? What do I need if I'm doing a sale, buyer or seller? So we will provide those as well with the updates. So you have those handy.
Just going to the cab, like if we are a listing agent and somebody, the buyer agent's insisting on that cab and we just said, well, just use a compensation addendum with your offer. Do we go to battle for that? Or can we stick to our guns and just refuse? Because it might be better for our sellers.
I think it's a conversation with your seller, but I would stand firm on using just the seller compensation addendum with the offer. I think especially if you're on the listing side and you're representing a seller and trying to do the best by them, it's by far, in my opinion, the safer option for a seller, because you're not obligating them to something before you've seen the offer. You know, I mean, it could be a terrible offer. And then again, you're back to negotiating only what's in that offer, and you've already obligated them to pay some amount, you know, to cover.
So basically, there probably are some sellers out there that want to offer compensation, and they may want to offer a high compensation because they understand this is business.
Mhm.
So in that situation, if your seller is telling you, hey, I want to offer 16 bananas and I want you to tell everybody, then you'll tell everybody any way you can. And it's probably going to be through those type of things. But you don't necessarily need to use that document. You can just tell it to them verbally, right?
Yeah. Again, it's an offer, it's an advertisement. So I think that's the thing to remember. Donna?
I've been reading and seeing so many things, and I thought I saw someplace, because me and Vern were discussing this yesterday, that you're not allowed to scare the seller and tell them, hey, Bob,
No.
you're not going to get any buyers to see your house if you don't offer commissions. Is this correct?
Correct. That's always been the case. We should never be steering. We should never be coercing. We should never be putting anyone under duress to make those decisions. We need to provide them the data that says why something is or isn't a good idea for them. And it's going to be an individual listing and seller conversation, and you're going to have sellers who say, I don't care if it's better. I don't want to do it. And that's their decision, and again, we have at that listing agreement point, we have the decision to say, is that someone we want to work with or not? And those are okay either way. But I think, the reason, again, that I like the seller compensation addendum is because even if a seller says, I'm not going to offer anything, a buyer can submit that with their offer. And if it's a really good offer and maybe they're, trying to offer things that might help offset that for them and make that easier on the seller so the net's really still the same, you may have a seller that says at that point, okay, I'm okay with it. So again, it's just part of the closing costs that are going to be negotiated, just like everything else. And I think if we just remember normal real estate and our fiduciary duties that we owe to our clients and looking out for their best interests and listening to them and what they want and acting on that and keeping ourselves out of that, our negotiation with our client should only be regarding that compensation they're agreeing to pay us for our services. That's it. It shouldn't get in the way of anything else. And it won't even moving forward.
So I had a listing the other day and the seller was asking questions. And so I explained everything out. She goes, I want to offer a co-broke, right? A nice one, right? And she goes, if you can inspire the buyer's agent can inspire their client. And I just thought that was cool. So most sellers are still programmed to want to offer a compensation. And you just have to follow what your client wants, right? I know right now, currently, 100% of my listings, the sellers are offering a compensation. I'm assuming in the future, we'll have it similar,
Right.
you know,
And
so.
it's
And
a marketing
I may
tool.
not take a listing if they don't,
Yeah.
we
You
have to
have-
agree. Hold on.
Oh, microphone.
Go ahead.
I was like, all I wanted to ask you was, how did you handle that? Just verbally, or did you use the form?
Listing agreement. Yeah.
Good.
That happened too. That was last week. So we
Okay.
haven't got to use these new forms yet.
The
till
forms are today.
Today.
Yeah, they just became available. And think of the compensation or what the seller wants to offer as it's marketing. It's no different than them offering anything else about their house differently or saying, my house is this, so I want you to advertise it this way, in this publication, because I know that in this area that's very popular or whatever it is. It's no different if you think about it that way. If that makes sense.
I see a lot of communication through Aligned. Every time I'm showing a house, they send messages or I respond to messages if it's my listing. You know that people are going to send information this way. Are we just like immediately just go to a text message service at that point instead of using that service?
Yes, in those cases, I would immediately go to a text message, a phone call, an email, something outside of Aligned to have those conversations.
Here's the tip I heard today from an agent in Florida. So on her iPhone or Android, she created shortcuts. So when people call her and ask her something, she can immediately text back. So she can text, you guys know how to use a shortcut, right? So she can just put 3 or 2, a couple
Or
letters or whatever that number might
bananas.
reference, and immediately get a compensation back to the other agent.
You can have an email responder that says, if it, on these listings, please submit a seller compensation addendum or with the amounts that the seller might be offering. You could have that on an email response for every email that comes in and just have a little link, a little blurb about it there. You could do it in a flyer in the house. So for every person that shows it, you could say, not an MLS, but you could have an auto response or a text that says, please see information in the house when you go to show, and have it there on the kitchen counter or on a sign writer. I've heard some agents that are going to do sign writers. I think, again, it's just depending on how you want to do that, but as long as it's outside of MLS.
So to make sure it's working. 2 things. Can a title company share your listing flyers with the bananas noted?
Can a title company?
Yeah,
share
like
it?
let's say there's a title company out there and they share, flyers of your listings to their database. Is that allowed?
I think so.
Okay.
I've never had anyone.
I was
You
just
could do
curious.
it too. You can send out your own flyers. It's not connected to
Yeah.
MLS.
Okay, and then question regarding the buyer employment agreement, the new one.
Yes.
So I know we can only put in a set amount of
Correct.
bananas.
Yes.
In the additional clause, terms and conditions section, can we put something to the effect of, we will be using the seller compensation addendum when we present an offer? And if they will not authorize the amount that we've agreed upon, you are lower to that amount. Can you put some verbiage in there about that?
It's already in there.
Oh, it is?
Yeah, it's in some of the fine print of the buyer broker agreements.
Okay, I just want to make sure that so when we're talking to our buyers, we can say, look, this is the amount that I would love, but it may not be feasible and I'm not going to come after you for it. I would, you know what I mean? Does that make sense?
That's a business decision for
Right.
each of you if you're going to make those kind of offers.
Yeah.
You know, we call them commission ectomies. In situations where we come to an impasse on negotiations, sometimes we step up and say, you know what, I'm not going to let this or my client lose it because of someone's being difficult and won't cover another however much they need covered. You know, those are gonna be business decisions each individually you can make. And
Okay, I
as a
just didn't-
company, we don't dictate
I didn't know
that.
if that's where you would put it in the additional terms, or would you use like an addendum
It's-
to the buyer? Okay,
The language is in there, so it's more of a conversation, and if you get to that point, then you would use the addendum to
Okay.
it to make that
thank you.
change.
Roberta?
Seems like a super simple question here, but related to a line showings,
Yes.
if someone were to write a message back that says, will your seller offer compensation?
Mhm.
I would think that that's crossing the line for them, for
Yes.
sure.
Yes.
May we respond with write it up or use the seller compensation or
I would
just,
say
just
call-
don't respond?
I would not, if you respond with anything, and again, these are things we don't know how MLS is, you know, Armless or anybody else is gonna look at these type of situations. I think we'll know over the next 2 weeks, because that's when they're policing it the heaviest to see if we're in compliance by the 17th. I think I would just respond, call me, text me, you know, or put a phone number in there, or something that is clear that I'm not gonna respond to this, I'm not gonna engage in that conversation, but we can have it over here outside of that. And again, we'll learn as this happens, what MLS is, you know, suggesting in those situations.
I just don't want to be responsible for shutting down the entire
No.
office by
No.
Thank you.
responding poorly.
Thank you, thank you.
And
Um,
everybody should be hearing that.
Yes, yeah. Yeah, yeah, it's,
I don't think can you use the other? Yeah, I guess you could. A little bit. You got one in the back first?
I just want to clarify something. Okay, have a buyer broker agreement with a client. I'm out of town, another agent is going to show the property. I want to verify, are they okay to show it? Do they have to, how do we handle that?
so I meant to say, thank you, Deb. You and some, thank you. All my notes that you must have read before I walked in. Buyer broker agreements are with the brokerage. So oh, sorry, the question was, if you're going out of town, you have a buyer broker agreement with a client, you're going out of town, you have someone covering you, you use field services or a partner or a team member or whoever, the buyer broker agreement is with the brokerage. I would recommend, because, and this is just a recommendation, if you know who that's gonna be, if you have someone that is covering for you, the buyer broker agreement does have 2 lines for the names, for the agent names. So you could have, you know, say, add that other person's name just to be safe and just for disclosure purposes to your client so that they understand. But yes, it is with the entire brokerage, and I did clarify that with legal.
Shannon, what about the agent that's showing? Because they're required to have, before they show a house, they have to have a signed agreement. So,
That is the signed agreement, the existing
Okay,
one,
all right.
because it's with the brokerage, so they would have that already. Yeah. The question was, can you put the team name? I'm not sure about that. I think, I'll find out. I don't know. Again, some of these things we're gonna learn all together.
So with the buyer broker, as Alicia and I work together on our buyer broker, we always include both of our names. But if we're going to be gone,
we don't need any additional document to cover an agent that's gonna step in for us.
Correct. So no, she would not need a separate agreement or the other person covering, as long as they're in the same Remax Professionals brokerage. Yes. So if you use field services or you know, work with someone else, it's all under the same umbrella. If you will.
You had already answered this at a previous meeting, but I figured I'd mention it again. In a lot of real estate Facebook groups, and they are talking about that there's going to be third-party websites that you can go in and put your listing and list compensation. So if you just wanted to reiterate if that is allowed or
I would say no, that, because as soon as that's the big one, is that as soon as we have our compensation and someone else's in a single place, that is gonna get us all shut down. That's the big one, which is why I say be very careful where you're, if you're posting anything. In my opinion, if you wanted to be ultra conservative and safe, just don't put anything on the internet. Do it by text, do it by email, have an auto response, have a flyer in the house, have a sign writer, have it completely outside of the internet and MLS. And that would be your safest bet always.
I'd be real careful on some of these Facebook groups. They're saying a lot of stuff they shouldn't be saying.
Yes.
And if you're in that group and in that string and the DOJ wants to investigate 500 people because they're in part of that group, I'd be very careful what I say and what group I follow. Just this morning on the ride home from the plane, I was reading stuff and I was like, whoa.
Well, and we all know when it's online like that, it could be someone from a different state. They might have different rules there. Again, there's nuances to all of this. The decisions we're making are because of our local rules, and it all stems from the national settlement. But then again, like armless is going to be different from a different MLS, and they all have that option, but the compliance is all the same, local.
Hey, we're gonna do a get well wish video for Stephanie, the young that was supposed to be here today. So kind of get your smiles ready, and guess what are we gonna say? Hey, Stephanie, we're thinking of you. Repeat after me.
Samantha.
Samantha, yeah, Samantha. There you go.
We have some online questions
All right,
still,
but
real
don't,
quick.
we want to do that before we get going.
Yeah.
Online question is something was said on Tuesday about using the seller compensation agreement with the cab. Under what circumstances?
My first recommendation is not to do that. But if you're on a buyer side and you have pre-negotiated that cab with the other broker, and then you do an offer, back up to the slide, or maybe not. Oh, the seller compensation addendum. There's a second section that basically now you have to check that you have a separate agreement as well, in addition to what you're negotiating on that, which is where, again, I believe it's just confusing. Just use the one. It's just so much cleaner, easier, less confusion, who it's coming from. Because, and I'll go into if you want to hear why, there's other reasons. The cab agreement is a compensation agreement between brokers. So the way that money runs is seller separate, you negotiate with a buyer broker that this is what I'm going to pay from the listing broker to the buyer broker, and the seller's agreeing to compensate the listing broker for that money. That's how the money runs. On the seller compensation addendum, again, seller's paying seller, said listing agent, buyer's paying buyer's agent. They're negotiating how that's going to be covered between them in one place. That's it. And if it's negotiated on the seller compensation addendum, it's actually the seller paying the buyer broker directly, which is where I believe if the future changes potentially come with what the DOJ wants, that if it's not definitive yet, but what they want and what they've indicated is they don't want us in the middle. That removes us from the middle. It's directly seller to client or seller to agent, and we're out of the middle of sharing a commission. Does that
Shan-
make sense?
Shannon, doesn't that agreement hold us liable in case the seller doesn't want to pay it later?
I mean, it, like the buyer broker, if the
'Cause-
seller
'cause we're
refuses,
paying it, we're paying it, that's what.
we
that
are,
document
but the
says.
language in the listing agreement says that they will cover that cost. There is very specific language there. I just think I would rather have the seller covering that than a broker to broker. Personally.
Shannon,
Yes. Yeah.
Can
You're gonna
you-
want to turn your buyer broker agreements into escrow. Make sure you're paid. You're gonna want to make sure this is, again, when you're using this addendum, no matter what, make sure that on page 1 of the contract, you check that on lines 30, I believe it's 37 or 38, right on the bottom of the first page, where you add your HOA addendum, your lead paint, your solar. Make sure you're checking the box for seller compensation so that it's automatically attached to those contracts. So, to clarify, if the cab versus thank you. So the top section lines, sorry, my eyes are so bad, 8 through 13 would be just the simple negotiation during the purchase contract. If you have a cab, then you're gonna jump to lines 14 to 18,
All that highlight.
and you're gonna have to fill all that out and then distinguish who's being paid by which party and all of that confusion in my opinion.